The ancient Incan people named alpaca the fiber.
It's not a game, it's a rich thing.
Hi, guys. Happy Monday. Oh my gosh, it's Monday. I think there's like 10 days till Christmas. Um, if you don't celebrate Christmas, I'm kind of jealous. I know there's always all this stuff to do, all this rushing around. When my son was little, I feel like it was almost easier. I don't know, nowadays, we don't do a whole lot of gift giving because it's consumer culture. Um, but there are those people that you want to give a little token to, and just to say I appreciate you, happy holidays. And sometimes that is very, very difficult. um so I spent the weekend kind of thinking about a couple of people, a family friend. um oh, okay, Jared, thank you. Let me see. This is the weird stuff that happens as soon as we have to rebuild computers. Is that better? I hope that's better. um so I spent the weekend trying to think of nice things I could do for a family friend, and things like that. So anyway, I hope you guys had a good weekend. I got snow. I knew that we were in for some precipitation, but I guess I didn't realize it was gonna be snow. And I want to say we got like, I think it could have been like 4 inches, maybe. Could be a little more, could be a little less. It was enough to be a nuisance. So I hope you guys are warm and dry. And my husband, he took off some time today from work, and he's talking about going out and doing some snow blowing. I'm like, good luck, buddy. Won't find me out there. All right. So today, what I thought we would do is revisiting the topic of neon prints, because last time I talked about them, I was kind of poking around and making some guesses. And then, lo and behold, after I think I presented that, it's been a few weeks ago. I think I had said I'd been having trouble, just Googling. And I don't know why it didn't come up on Google the first time, or the many times I was poking around. But Barbara Brackman did have, on one of her blogs, she did have a reference to neon fabrics. And it was a specific print, so I'm not going to pull that up, but she referenced one of her own books. And I was like, wait a minute, I don't have that book. I thought I had that book. I don't have that book. So I did finally get my hands on it. It is this one, Making History, Quilts and Fabric from 1890 to 1970. The one before that one is America's Printed Fabrics, 1770 to 1890. So these books were written, published in the early 2000s, I think. Like one's 2008 and one's maybe 2014. I can't remember. Let me see really quickly. Okay, 2008 for the second one. So the first one would be earlier than that. Maybe it's 2003, 2004. So 2004, 2008, and then Clues in the Calico was much earlier than that. I want to say Clues in the Calico is the 90s, maybe 1989. So these, I guess I would consider these books, these two books to be sort of her follow-up on Clues in the Calico. So I was going to read you a few selections from there. I also found some very interesting books in the Internet Archive. So these are ones that you too can look at. And I think they were printed in the 70s, I think, published in the 70s. So, you know, we could kind of guess that the intel is correct because, I mean, Brackman references them. So yeah, I thought that there was a couple things would be interesting to pull out of there. And specifically, so the neon prints from Brackman. And then I keep like kind of getting tripped up by this idea of black. And unfortunately, looking at pictures online, it's often really hard to tell because pictures taken of quilts, depending on the lighting, can vary widely. Jill and I looked at a quilt this weekend. We did some pre-recording. We looked at a quilt, and this quilt was like dark indigo blue, like midnight blue, very dark. I mean, you could tell it wasn't black, but it was a very dark blue. And she was trying to get some imagery of the quilting. It was a whole cloth quilt. And so literally she's like up under the quilt trying to get a good angle to see the quilting. And in that photograph, the quilt suddenly becomes like just this washed out, like bluish, whitish color. And that was interesting because do you guys remember the dress? Hey JB, oh my gosh, it's been forever. It's good to see you. I'm glad you're here. Oh gosh, I missed what Jared said. Snow days are fun. No snow here, just bitter cold. Oh gosh, yeah. Um, I think we were like 11 or 12 degrees the other night. So yeah, that bitter cold is just, it's awful. But add in precipitation, even worse. But yes, the dress. So if you guys don't remember the dress, it's because it was so traumatic you blocked it out or you were living under a rock. But the quick version of this is there was this picture of a dress that broke the internet because some people saw the dress and to them it looked white and gold. And then other people saw the dress and they saw blue and like maybe blue and black or something. And it was crazy. And people just argued and argued about it. And there was another one that was audio based. But the dress was so interesting and people wrote, these scientific treatises about, eyeballs and how we perceive color and all this stuff. It was so interesting. But literally, so I can tell you guys when you, if you watch the pre-recorded video that Jill and I will have available on the 23rd, so on YouTube, Quilt Nerding, you'll see the quilt. It's like the first quilt we look at. And it definitely, absolutely reminded me of the dress. So funny. But anyway, long story short, when you're looking at quilts and fabric, or really anything that is a color online, if it is taken with a photograph, and there's not like proper color, I can't remember the name they use, but like it's kind of assuring that the color's as close as possible. These colors can be so off. And I mean, certainly like if you've ever looked at a picture of a famous quilt in a book and then subsequently seen the quilt, That's happened to me several times where I'm like, oh my gosh, this quilt is so much prettier and brighter and more vibrant than the photography was able to get in the book. And obviously, happens all the time on the internet. So what I'm trying to say here is I keep seeing these quilts and people are saying like, oh, this quilt is from the 30s, 1860s. And I'm like, it seems to me like that quilt has some black in it. And it looks pretty dark to me. And it isn't deteriorated. So what gives? Because supposedly there were not stable blacks until later in the 19th century. And I'm correct about that. I have the intel to back it up here, and this is just like this is my scattershot research. This is one of those things, like if I was going to go deep into this research, this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is just starting to give me some ideas. So I thought I would just kind of read some snippets out of it, and yeah, just I like doing these kind of quick little dips into research because I mean, this is kind of how you learn a little bit about a subject. You can go wide versus deep with these little research things. So first of all, let us read about neons to get neons out of the way, because neons are a short topic. So in Making History, Quilts and Fabric from 1890 to 1970 by Barbara Brackman. There's the book. Like I said, this one is 2008, so this is the later one. And she has a section called Black Novelty or Neon Prints. So exactly what I was looking for. And I didn't take any pictures of the pages, but you can see, based on these pictures, these look familiar, hopefully. These are the things we've been we looked at, like that bright pink, these kind of like, I don't know, these floral and sort of seaweed-like shapes. And like this brilliant blue and brilliant yellow. So, and then the background is black. So this is what she has. And I think, is there another picture? Oh yeah, here's more. These are the ones that really, have that, the squiggly lines and all this. 1890s. Okay, so this is what she says about Black Novelty or Neon Prints, and this is on page 30 of the book. Black Novelty prints feature bright figures sparkling on true black backgrounds. Called various names in catalogs, such as fancy black novelties or black novelty goods, they were described in the 1896 Sears catalog. Fancy dress skirts of black novelty goods worn with cotton or silk waists will be the most striking feature in fashionable ladies' attire for the spring and summer season. So can you imagine, like, wearing a skirt of this stuff and then, like just a plain white blouse? It cut an interesting figure. Montgomery Ward's 1895 catalog included the name of the mill by advertising Cochico Fast Black Novelty. So Cochico, and I'm trying to remember if it was me and Jill talking about it on Quilt Nerding or me talking about it here, but Cochico was one of the very well-known mills, very prolific mill in Massachusetts. And so, I think that dropping that name, people would be aware that this is, they were a good mill, they were recognized, I guess the same way as maybe dropping brand names like we do today. So they advertised Cochico Fast Black Novelties, solid black grounds with colored printing, heliotrope, I don't know what color that is, but it sounds delightful, gold, blue, green. I think heliotrope might be like bright pink, or do you guys know? I just love the sound of that. Accidentally turn on the music. Okay. Print content includes florals and geometrics, but many were wild abstractions resembling today's Times Square at midnight. Yeah, she's right. Today's fabric collectors call black and bright prints neons, borrowing a name from a 1990s color scheme popular with skateboarders and bicyclists. Although neon light hadn't yet been discovered at the turn of the last century, the name neon print is quite descriptive. The American Textile History Museum's earliest black novelty prints are swatches produced by the Merrimack Manufacturing Company in 1896, 3 years after sulfur black's discovery. We'll talk about sulfur black. So 1893 then is the discovery of sulfur black. Early 20th century swatch books are full of examples paralleling the years from 1900 to 1920 when they appear in quilts and clothing. Backgrounds of the black novelties rarely rot, fade, or bleed, but the colors in the figures can be quite fugitive, especially when washed. Once the color figures bleed out, the prints seem black and white, as the figures are a ghost of once bright color. Look at your well-washed quilts for neon prints faded to pale imitations of their former tints. These black novelties, so popular between 1900 and 1920, offer a good clue to an early 20th century quilt. So, yeah. And I think to the uninitiated eye, which I still remain, sometimes these things confuse me because you have some really sophisticated prints going on in the early 1800s, like 1840s, 1860s. They were doing really interesting things print-wise, like those rainbow prints, which is kind of the ombre-looking stripy things. And so looking at these are also pretty sophisticated. And so, I feel like without this kind of intel, it is really hard to separate these things, to ferret out what, you're looking for. So, let's see in here. So yeah, so what she's done in this book, which I highly recommend this book if you don't have it, she shows, one page will be reproductions and one page will be the real deal. So in this one, these are the antique prints, and then this page behind it are the reproductions. So, it's really hard to tell the difference, in my opinion, in a book, or even online. Obviously these antique fabrics are probably yardage and scraps that have been kept away from light. They haven't been washed. So, they look very similar, but flipping back and forth between these two pages, obviously the reproductions have this very dense, like a dense black, whereas this is a little bit of a lighter black that seems to me like, it's seen some light. It's gotten a little faded. So, and I think that probably closes the book on neons. We know what they are. We know when they came about. We know when they were popular. And so therein my quest to understand exactly what they are. But I'm going to keep my eyes open, and I hope you guys do too. If you see a quilt out there and you're like, I know those are neons, think about it. Like, do the dates match up? Yeah. So now let's look into black fabrics, because this is kind of the crux of the neons, is that they weren't they wouldn't have been as striking and beautiful if it weren't for the really solid deep black fabric. And that's where I keep, my mind keeps questioning, like, what So I thought this was interesting. So this is in her other book, America's Printed Fabric. So again, we're still with Brackman. And I'm just kind of going to dip in here in a couple different places. But she talks about matter style prints. And this was another thing, I think, when we were reading Clues in the Calico and I went through all the different colors. I know I had read it before, but it kind of surprised me to revisit it. That madder, MADDER, is you could get a whole range of colors out of madder. And often we hear about madder printed reds, and they were kind of the sad the sad precursor to turkey red, which is that really vibrant red that is very fast, You know, you could wash it and it wouldn't make everything pink. And so when turkey red came on the scene in the early 1800s and was, well, I think that the process had been in Turkey and Middle East. They'd been doing it for a long time. But when it came west and was integrated into this whole fabric distribution system, the turkey red became so very popular. And when you think about those red and green applique quilts, 1860s, that's turkey red was like just the craze here. And of course, it came earlier. But before that, and I mean well into earlier centuries, madder was used to dye, and it makes a rusty red is kind of what I always thought about it, and kind of variations on rusty red, like maybe a rusty pink. Interestingly enough, one of the castles that I went to in England, they had a little display of natural dye and fabric, and madder was one of those. They had, I believe they actually had like a dried piece of the plant, and I can't remember what that looked like. But they had like wool and I think wool, linen, and silk dyed with the different colors, and then explaining what each of the dye stuff was. And so the madder one was a rusty red. However, you can get this amazing range of colors with madder. And so dipping in here, this is page 100 of America's Printed Textiles. Textile manufacturers used the term madder style to refer to madder's mordant printing techniques as well as to its palette. In his 1887 dye manual, Antonio Sansom described the spectrum of old madder styles with a bit of nostalgia. Reds, pinks, browns, purples, chocolates, and blacks. Madder could produce brilliant turkey red, so this is also where turkey red comes from, if it were mordanted and treated in a complex fashion. And one of the things, it was boiled in oil. And I think it was the thread, the yarn, before it was even woven. It goes through all this process, and boiling in oil is part of that process. And I keep wondering to myself, even now, like, how did they get the oil out? Because I mean, I picture it being like you've got this greasy hank of red thread. So I don't know. It's a complex process. Obviously, there's something that makes it so it's not greasy once it's woven. Sansom was referring to simpler reds ranging from red orange through brick red to wine, shades that dyers called sad reds. And I think it's because they're not as pretty and vibrant as a turkey red. Pinks, on the other hand, could be quite bright. The double pinks were so common in quilts and children's clothing in the 19th century. But because the process to obtain bright pinks was different, pinks are not usually included under the term madder style prints. So she goes on to say, historian Lewis Mumford called the last years of the century the brown decades. The color of American civilization abruptly changed. By the time the war was over, browns had spread everywhere. Mediocre drabs, and so this is, I think, meaning the Civil War. Mediocre drabs, dingy chocolate browns, sooty browns that beiged into black. So it was like, brown that beiges into black. I guess it turns into black. His perspective, looking backward, reveals a 20th century disdain for the color. But in the Gilded Age, the era of brownstone buildings, walnut furniture, and chestnut-haired beauties, brown truly reigned. The most popular browns in cotton are madder shades, warm reddish browns ranging from tan through dark purplish brown that dyers called chocolate, the same shade as today's Hershey bar wrapper. The American Museum of Textile History owns a handwritten dye book called Recipes for Chocolates, which has nothing to do with the edible kind. And then she goes on to talk about puce, which is more of a purple. And then she's getting into kind of the purples. But then to skip ahead here, Madder blacks are a dark brown rather than a true blue black, and the quilt detective must learn the difference between Madder's brownish black and later sulfur black, which appeared after 1890. Madder black, usually used as a figure rather than a ground, has a reddish value, and sulfur black, which can be a figure or a ground, is more neutral. Madder browns and near blacks have an unfortunate tendency to deteriorate or tender fabric. So that's the terminology for like fabric rot, and not from necessarily bad conditions, although I think bad conditions can also tender fabric, but I think it's specifically this deterioration just from normal everyday climate and such, along with these mordants. So she says iron used in the mordanting process interacts with oxygen in the air, essentially rusting the fabric over time. Antique quilts are full of madder-style prints that have oxidized, leaving holes in calicos and empty lines and stripes. Many brown patches have completely disappeared. The darker the brown, the more iron in the mordant, and the more likely the fabric is to rot over time. And so it's really just like oxygen. It's not even like, bright light or humidity or anything, poor storage, anything like that. It's specifically the oxidation. Now, this is interesting. I don't know where this is pulled from. I'm assuming, let's see, she's got a footnote. Let me see what chapter this is so I can tell you guys what this is. Chapter 4, footnote 9. Let's see. I hate the fact they made her put quilt. They made her put quilt patterns in here. Where is the bibliography? Huh. She's got these footnotes now, but I don't see a bibliography in here, which her other books are full of them. I wonder if this publisher... Well, okay, I don't know where this is from, but it is, my guess is it's from a letter or some type of narrative from this person. The person who wrote this is Harriet H. Robinson. So this is what she says. The first calico printing done in Lowell, Massachusetts, was at the Merrimack Corporation, and the prints were of very poor texture and color. The groundwork was madder, and there was a white spot in it for a figure. It cost about 30 cents a yard. The madder color was the product of an extensive cow yard in the vicinity of the Prince works. I don't know. I mean, I'm assuming a cow yard is where they round up cattle. I don't know. But I don't know how that relates. So they were the product of an extensive cow yard in the vicinity of the print works, and the prints were warranted not to fade. I had a gown of this material, and it proved a garb of humiliation, for the white spots washed out, cloth and all, leaving me covered with eyelet holes. This so amused my witty brother that whenever I wore it, he accused me of being more holy than righteous. You can't say that our ancestors weren't kind of funny. Okay, and so then she provides this little key here: mordants plus madder, the dye chemistry. So alum, aluminum. So an alum mordant plus madder gives you red and pink. Iron mordant plus madder gives you purplish browns and blackish browns. Iron, aluminum, and madder gives you the chocolate brown. And then if you add quercitron, which is another vegetable dye that produces different shades, different colors with different mordants, and the dyer obtained the red browns and cinnamon oranges. And then here's a word you guys will remember. With synthetic alizarin, tin mordants were used. Well, so alizarin is the red. And I'm trying to remember somebody, I don't know if it was Druid or somebody said how Bob Ross pronounced it. because it's one of those, it's, these, some of these dyes and things are the same compounds that would been used in paints, oil paints. And I did recently see that alizarin is actually an Arabic term, and the word would have originally been al space izarin. So alizarin. Yeah, that's right, alizarin. So yes, it is actually al izarin. So sorry, Bob Ross, you were pronouncing it wrong. It's it's an Arabic word. So I thought that was really interesting that, just depending on what how you line up these mordants, is how you get these different colors. And, alum, I didn't know that was like aluminum related, but I think alum is not as dangerous of a mordant or chemical as, say, iron. And iron obviously is, that's what's going to cause the rustiness. Okay, so another book. I promised myself I wasn't going to look at it till Christmas. The Secret Life of Textiles by Philip Sykes is a book that I have lusted after for a very long time, and it's pricey because it's printed by the Heritage Lottery Fund in the UK. It's an older book, and even though it's not really set up like a textbook, I think that it's kind of considered like an institutional book. It's a book that people possibly studying textiles would get. It was printed in 2005, so it's not that old of a book. I think it's very unfortunate that it was, I guess, a limited run because Druid has given us a Bob Ross link. But I think it's really unfortunate that this book was obviously published, with a limited run. It's not not in print anymore, and you will find copies. I mean, you can see how skinny this book is. It's not super. It's a little bit thicker than Brackman's books, but not much. And there are copies of it for like $280 some. I'm like, ugh, too rich for my blood. I managed to find a much cheaper copy, but still, this was my big Christmas present. And I promised I wouldn't look into it, but I have. So, let's see, where was it that I was looking in here for? Bear with me. Okay, this is what's interesting. So this is again about madder dyes. So he's talking about a specific notebook. These are like these print works that kept these notebook. They were like dyer recipes and then like fabric swatch samples. And so he's talking about the specific notebook from 1859, which contains recipes for madder and steam colors. I'm like, oh ho, what is this about steam? Some alongside printed cotton samples. For steam colors, both the dye and mordant were printed together. And so often the mordants usually would be before or after the dye. So either they're activating the dye or preparing the fabric and activating the dye, or activating the dye after the fact. But in this case, it's both the dye and the mordant are printed, and they're printed together, and the color is set by steaming. And then he mentions by the end of this book, new dyes, mauve and magenta, are mentioned, as well as Murexide, a purple dye that was superseded by other purples in the 1860s. Murexide, I guarantee you, is from those snails. And if you don't know about this one, there is a particular sea snail that I think was found, I can't remember if it was in the Mediterranean or if it was, I think it was probably the Mediterranean. The Holy Roman Empire basically made it extinct or extinct-ish because they hunted these little sea snails basically to extinction, because literally one drop of like whatever this, I don't know if it was their poison or if it was something like an octopus's ink. I don't know. But they could get this little drop of this purple stuff or this stuff out of the snail that would turn cloth purple, the rich royal purple. And they needed like, I can't, I'm quoting stuff that I can't remember where I saw it, but and we might have even read it here in some of our older books, but it essentially took like hundreds and hundreds of these little snails just to get enough to dye one small piece of fabric. So yes, okay. So Druid has purple dye from the sea snails known as Tyrian purple, comes from the secretions of certain murex species of sea snails. So that's where I knew that word would come from. The murex, it's their Latin name. And so my guess is where he's talking about this murexide must be some type of synthesis of these murex snails. So it started with the ancient Phoenicians, and then the process was extremely labor intensive and required thousands of snails to create even a small amount of dye, which is why it was so costly and reserved for royalty and the elite in ancient times. And particularly sumptuary laws, which were prescribed what kinds of clothing different classes of people were allowed to wear. Purple was always reserved for royalty. Anybody else caught wearing purple would have, I think, been assumed to either be, well, in the case of purple, I think the only assumption would be if you had a purple garment and you were not royalty, you probably stole it. With other types of you know, sumptuary laws, for instance, like wearing of different types of fur, or the chintz craze in England and France, when they outlawed some of these, middle class women still tried to either fake their way into it or get the real deal, and they were looked upon not so much as having like stolen something, but trying to appear above their station. So that's where those sumptuary laws would come in about you cannot walk around masquerading as royalty, and you should not be portraying yourself above your station in society. So, this is where all these things come from. And certainly those snails are from a very long time ago. The Phoenicians, I mean, are the Phoenicians before or after the Egyptians? This is where I need my big timeline all the way around my room. From the beginning of civilization, I need every date. But you can see like where these ideas come from. Like, there's something that is so rare. It can only be gotten for a very small group of people. So how do we control the masses and keep them from getting these rare good things? We pass laws that say you can't wear this if you're not a royal. So, I think this is where just one of the things that either comes from or contributes to class systems. And I can see we even, not at the risk of digressing a little bit, we get this in the US to some degree. I mean, we always say like US doesn't have a class system, like they do in the UK. I mean, there's a class system there for sure. And in places like India, there's the caste system is essentially the same thing. Although it has a lot to do with, sort of religion and things like that. But we're often said not to have this class system in the US. Like, it doesn't matter where you come from, you can become something. Whereas that is very rare in other places, well, in India, you can't necessarily jump castes. If you were in a lower caste, it is virtually impossible for you to jump caste simply because like you can't marry your way up. And like in England, say, you can marry your way in. So you can marry landed gentry, and sort of climb your way up. But as an American, you can be here with like 20 cents in your pocket and, eventually work your way up to being landowner, rich person, etc. However, I think that the class system very much is alive and well in the US. And when you look at it, you look at things like a person who perhaps does not have a lot of income. a person perhaps who's on public assistance. Think about if they show up with something that's considered like Louis Vuitton, something that's considered, like a high-end luxury good. There's going to be a lot of judgment and um, a lot of vitriol over a person who is looked at as poor sporting something that's high-end and luxury. And again, the question becomes, where'd you get that? How'd you get that? So there are these kind of this sumptuary, even though there's no sumptuary law, there's still this kind of attitude of sumptuary, I think, in our culture. So I digressed there. And Druid has some intel on the Phoenicians. Okay. So ancient Egypt is much older, established civilization long before the distinct Phoenician culture emerged. Okay. Egyptians had monumental structures and hieroglyphs by 3000 BCE, while Phoenician cities developed later with major influence around 1200 BCE. Okay. And they were related to the early Canaanites who interacted with Egypt. Okay. Essentially, Egyptians came first as a unified, powerful civilization, with Phoenicians rising as a prominent maritime force later from the same Canaanite roots. Okay, so they're related. They're peoples that are related. And I guess the Phoenicians, I guess, are a little bit more like, I guess, into the Middle East, I guess, with like Mesopotamia, like all this stuff. I keep thinking about like Western civilization and stuff that I took in like middle school and high school. It hasn't stuck very well. But I always appreciate Druid and Robin looking things up for us so we can remember. All right, so, oh, boo. Okay, I had this book. I have to borrow it again because these are books that you too can borrow from the Internet Archive. And they do different things with different books. Some of them, it's like you can borrow the book, you're borrowing it for 24 hours. This apparently, I guess, it renews as you read it, look at it, and if you don't look at it for 40 minutes, then it's going to return it. So let me scoot over here. Other screen. Yep. Okay. So this first one is by Florence Pettit. Let's see if I can make this bigger so you can see. Now, I love the title of this book. Can I move it? There we go. So this is called America's Printed and Painted Fabrics. All the ways there are to print upon textiles, a most complete history of the world fabric prints, all about the printers and patterns of America, and other things that went on. 1600 to 1900, other things that went on. I love that. That is so funny. So Florence Harvey Pettit, that we could find about her. And where I found her is by looking at the bibliography in, I think it was in Clues in the Calico. So this is something that, and you guys, if you remember school better than I do, you probably already know how to do these things. But when you're researching a topic, if, say, there's only one little blurb in a book, well, go look at the bibliography and see, if that little blurb has a footnote, then you know that there's more intel in that other book. So the bibliography is such a good place to look. And with a lot of these books that are out of print and from, the 70s and earlier, the Internet Archive is a really good place to look. I know that the Mavis Fitz-Randolph book that we read recently, it's here in the Internet Archive. So, all right, let me give you guys a link. Hopefully, wait a minute, let me go back so that, make sure I get you the right, okay. If you want to look at this. It's a black and white book. I've only gone through it a little bit, but it seems to be a pretty good book. So, and then the other one is this book, Printed Textiles, English and American Cottons and Linens, 1700 to 1850 by Florence Montgomery. Lots of Florences. Florence Pito being another, wonderful person that we've read and examined. So the other interesting thing is this is a Winterthur book. Winterthur. I can never say that. They're right in my backyard. They're in Delaware. Um, so let's read about these two authors because I wasn't familiar with them, but they are interesting. So America's Printed and Painted Fabrics, 1600 to 1900. Actually, let me leave you guys with this and then make it a little bit smaller so you can see the whole thing. I'll read it from my phone. I could see it better. Ba, 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 ba. All right. Oh, this is interesting. I guess I'm not signed in. All right. So, what they say here about Florence Pettit. This book is the first complete account of all that is known about American fabric printing and printers, from the first one-man shop in Boston in 1712. Well, I mean, the print shop starts at 1712. What happened? The other things that went on from 1600 to 1712. I'm curious about that. um, So, from the first print shop in Boston in 1712 through the flourishing manufactories of the 19th century to the beginning of the 20th, along with the historical facts, are many quotations that illuminate the vigor and enterprise of colonial printers. More than a lively and informative history, it describes and illustrates all methods of dyeing, painting, and printing of textiles by hand and by machine. There is also a history of world textile decoration with emphasis on the European printworks from which American printers came. Of special interest is a study of the fabrics known as American Blue resist prints that have puzzled museum curators and collectors for 200 years. The author's fabric printing experience and her feeling for the history of the period shed bright new light on the mystery. These so blue resist prints is a whole nother topic, and I've seen some kind of controversial things about them. Essentially I think are kind of like indigo, and I think like this, what we're seeing on the cover of this book, I think is a blue resist print. And what's happening here, if I understand correctly, and don't quote me on this, but I think this is what I've read. It's kind of a blotchy looking, it's a little blotchy, and that is because the resist is all in here. So all of these white areas would have been a resist. Wax is a common resist. I don't know if that's exactly what they would have used, but if you think about batik fabrics, they use a wax to create a design and then dye it. And then often boil that wax off, put more wax on, and dye again. So you can get these, different levels of color and all that stuff. But these I think they're just dyed blue. So there's just the one process, but it is also very like complex. What would be a more normal way of doing these would be to have this part be the resist. So the flower itself and the vines and things, that would be the resist, just like a batik. But I think with these blue resists, it's the other way around. So very strange. I read about it recently, and again, I don't know the details, but I think that's what they're talking about. Digress. So the author's fabric printing experience, well, we don't know yet what her experience is, and her feeling for the history of the period shed bright new light on the mystery. This book is illustrated with over 156 black and white photographs, 6 pages in full color, line drawings, and decorations. Included are unique charts of things that went on from 3500 BC to 1776, and from 1607 to 1775, and from 1776 to 1900. A list of first European printers, rosters of first American calico printers, American printers and printworks, and a list of major American textile exhibitions. Rounding out this volume is an invaluable biography and index. And the rest of this, oh poop. I'll have to look on this copy. I'm not logged in. Sorry. Sorry. Come on. Well, I guess we can't finish learning about Florence Pettit because this doesn't want to load. All right. Well, let's switch over to the other Florence for a minute. So this one, printed textiles. Oh, bother. This is so strange because I'm logged in, but for some reason it doesn't recognize that I have borrowed this. Okay, well, I will continue to read from the screen here. Oh, now it did. You know, we talked this weekend about how, I don't know, is it sun flares? There's something is going on meteorologically that is causing everybody issues. Okay, so the details about this book, Printed Textiles. Oh, and let me give you a link. Hopefully these are good links. Hey, Robin. Okay. So Florence Montgomery. Printed Textiles, English and American Cottons and Linens, 1700 to 1850. Now, these are two books. I'm really interested to see how much overlap they have. Like, you know, do they quote each other? And maybe not, because I think they were printed the same year. You know, do they use the same like intel? Be interesting to see. Oh, good. Drew said the links are good. So beginning about 1700, ever-increasing amounts of printed textiles were exported by England to America. And by the year 1800, the United States had imported 3,710,471 yards of printed linens and cottons from Great Britain. That 1 yard, that one extra yard. Mrs. Montgomery's purpose is to examine this remarkable trade and to explore the characteristic fashions of printed cottons, their methods of manufacture, and the use made of them in America, especially for bed furniture, window curtains, and slipcovers. Prior to 1955, French toiles were considered the greatest achievement of the 18th century textile printer's art. Well, that's news to me. I thought the chintzes were the big deal. Because toiles are typically just one color. Chintzes are many colors. But after the discovery of numerous documented examples in factory pattern books, the English contribution was recognized. It is apparent that a vast quantity of pictorial and decorative textiles of the greatest originality were produced in England, some of them expressly for the American market. What is interesting is I have found that, yes, some were for the American market and some were just simply dumped here. So they're what the British considered their seconds, the ones that weren't quite as good or not quite as popular. The year after, they would like TJ Maxx us. So it's like, oh, these aren't selling over here. Let's just send them off to the American, the Americans. Following the example of the research conducted at the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, Printed Textiles documents the numerous styles which succeeded one another in close succession from 1750 to 1850. In the catalog section, more than 400 examples of printed textiles from the Winter Museum collection are described in detail. Of special importance are the 12 color plates from clean, unfaded pieces. In addition to being a valuable reference on printed textiles, this lavishly illustrated book provides endless inspiration for decorators and designers in many fields. So let's see. Let's see if we can find some of these. Well, if we can find some of these tables that they have in here. Or not. Literally nothing is loading. This one was from the Boston Public Library, by the way. Oh, look, here's some things coming up. So that's the list of illustrations. Oh, this is so annoying. This is probably the midday slump with the internet. Let's see if this one's come up any. Nope. Well, so much for that. Let me see if I can find something in here. Okay. Let's see what is in here. Florence Montgomery. Oh, there are lots of black and white pictures in this book. Oh, there's a lovely toile. It's taking forever to load here on my phone as well. Well, gosh darn it. I'm sorry, you guys. I really wanted to look through this book with you. And it also had some interesting information about black fabric. Yeah, I can't get any of these to come up. Well, what a bummer. It seems like little bits and pieces are loading, but not much. Oh, look at this one. There's one that has loaded. So this is from Printed Textiles by Florence Montgomery. Look at this. This is pretty grand. Let's see, I can zoom in more. What an interesting quilt. So this is like broderie purse, I'm sure. You got all of these bits and pieces that would have been cut out of chintz. And then these look like border prints. These could also maybe, well, I don't know. I don't know what to say about this. Let's see. Okay, so this one is quite likely printed like this. So this says bedspread with urn of flowers and birds, block printed by John Hewson of Philadelphia. 1780 to 1790. Now, John Hewson is an interesting one because his factory, his mill, did not keep like sample books. If they had swatch books, they destroyed them, which is very unfortunate because Hewson did some really amazing stuff. And I mean, you can see this. And again, whether this was printed and these were cut out, I mean, I suspect these could have been cut out, but it's really hard to tell. Okay. Oh, we're starting to get some. Okay. You can see all the different things in here. Oh, there's an old tester bed. Let's see. I'm looking for some type of, oh, look at these. These are swatch books. We're looking for some kind of table. Oh, look here. I'm sorry. I can't. This is what Jill gets mad at me because I'm like, oh, look at that. Look at that. What is that? There's a fun pocket. A pair of ladies' pockets. And then let's see. Looked like there was a garment here too. This. Oh, look at that. A waistcoat, perhaps? Very cool. Okay. So let's see. Oh my gosh, you guys. Wouldn't it be fantastic if this book were in color? All of it in color. You could see all of these gorgeous prints. Okay, I think this is what is this? Nah, it wasn't what I thought it was, but holy moly, look at that. Okay. So we're looking for some tables. Here's something. What is this? Ah, so we've got some information on matter. Okay. So I'm trying to think. I don't know that this was what I had looked at earlier out of here because it's talking about yellows. But here she says acetate or acetate, I guess it's acetate, of alumine diluted. So you get deep red, second red, third red. So what I do know about dyeing is you can exhaust the dye bath, and each subsequent dyeing, if you get any color at all, it's going to be much lighter. And I mean, it's just one of those things that it should make sense to you. Now, with modern synthetic dyes, you can literally exhaust the dye bath to the point that you pull your article out. The dye bath itself can be like not clear, but can be awfully light colored because the dye gets all sucked up into the fabric. That's modern synthetics. All right, so acetate of iron diluted, brown or black, and then diluted lilac. Acetate of alumine and iron, purple. Now here's bark dye. I wonder what kind of bark. Indigo dye. Okay, now this is dyeing it on other colored fabric. So that's something to think about. Oh my goodness, look at these. Oh, if only we could see them in color. Oh, okay. Okay, we have to look at these. Let me see, make this smaller. Let's see it better. So these are typically the chintzes I don't love, but I think I've found some love for them. Just in looking at how how detailed this stuff is and how these are printed. I mean, this is multiple types of printing on top of printing, and this has to be carefully registered. Registration means that it's printing on the right place it's supposed to print. We have all seen cheap things, either illustration, like paper things, or fabrics that the registration wasn't right. So that the printing is kind of offset a little bit, and you'll end up with, like a halo of this other color. And in a lot of chintzes, it's blue and yellow that you see that with, because you had to, before you could get a green, before they had a safe and stable green, you had to print yellow on top of blue or blue on top of yellow. So the fact that this doesn't show any of that means this is a very skillfully printed piece. Oh my gosh, you guys, look at this. Oh, there is so much going on in this. I don't even know where to look. Look at this. What are these little, like, oh my goodness, there's like little banner things in here and all of these flowers and things. Like, I don't even know what do you consider this? Is this even a chintz? Like, I don't even think this is a chintz. Maybe it is. That's very dense. Very, very dense. And this definitely has a different vibe to it. This is kind of, the dress the lady's wearing is sort of neoclassical, so we would say early 1800s is what I, off the bat, would say about this. Oh, that's interesting. An interesting figure. Oh, now look at this. So these kind of things could be used as medallions. I guess depending on how big they are, you could have cut around that and either applicate it or inset it in piecing into a block. Look at that. Oh my gosh, you guys, this is amazing. What wild colors. I mean, by no means does this look modern, but the color vibrancy is so modern looking. I like this one. And this is very pretty too. Look at this. I could see this as wallpaper. Really wild wallpaper. What else do we have? Okay. An oak tree with what looks like ivy on it. There are acorns. Are there any animals in here? Are there squirrels? I don't see any. Bummer. This is pretty wild too. Look at this. Oh my goodness. I like that one. Now this one, let's see if I can zoom in even more. Here's where you've got a little bit of a registration issue. You see that little sliver of blue right there. Because the blue has been printed, it appears to me, blue printed on top of yellow to make this green, because you've got a little bit of yellow shading around it still. And then it gives it away that the blue is there. Oh, we still have some more. Let's see. Oh my goodness. And this, I think, later 19th century. This one's fun. This is probably early 19th century, I guess. Early to mid. Oh, there's something written here. Philadelphia. Oh my goodness. Philadelphia. Printed. Oh, I can't see. Printed by. I can't tell. Still, that's pretty cool fabric too. It's got sort of a little bit more of a primitive look about it, right? And here you can see some registration issues also, where either like whatever the printing method is, it's starting over here and it didn't quite match up. Okay, that's all we've got for those pretty pictures. Let us go back here. And if I can find, this is all still loading. Dang it. All right, let's go back to this one and see. We still haven't loaded anything here. I think I may be out of luck, you guys. I think I'm probably going to have to take some screenshots to get the detail that I wanted to share with you. I should have done that. Lesson learned. Okay, I'll come back to the 4. Yeah, I check these books out. They're, I keep stumbling across stuff that's on the Internet Archive, and I mean, what a great resource. I know the Internet Archive kind of went through some strife. It was a couple years ago, I think, where there was some copyright issues, people that wanted their books pulled. And by virtue of that, there was a lot of talk about copyright, and so it wasn't just authors, but it was institutions and stuff also pulling books. So there were some really good ones that disappeared. But I think some of these older books are still pretty easy to find on the Internet Archive. So from a research perspective, if you were looking for this information, I think the Internet Archive is always a great place to stop to, see if this author and these titles are available. And at the very least, even if you can't, some of them don't give you the option to check them out online because they're sort of just I guess just parts of it have been scanned. You can still at least look at like the front and back and get some idea that you might not be able to find anywhere else. So, well, I guess since I can't get these to load any further, we'll have to come back to this topic at a different time. I just keep hoping all of a sudden it'll pop up, but alas. All right. Well, that being done, let's read. Let us read. We only got one little chapter of the Patchwork Girl done the other day, and you know, I'm kind of liking with what's going on with the Patchwork Girl. Um, she obviously is very smart. So is the little munchkin guy that's with her. All right, let me find my picture. Here we go. And that. Let's see. All right. So, Patchwork Girl of Oz. And we know Frank Baum wrote this in, I believe it was 1913. And this was a sequel to the other Oz books. So I think he had written like 6 of them. And he comes up with this crazy little story at the beginning about having been shut out of Oz, which was why he couldn't write any more books. But apparently the public clamored for more. So he, because the telegraph was the new technology, he said, oh, well, I could telegraph my way into Oz and they can send me information. So where we left off is that the Patchwork Girl, the Glass Cat, and Ojo, the little munchkin boy, are leaving on a trip, a journey, to find materials that the Crooked Magician needs to turn Ojo's uncle and the Crooked Magician's wife. They've been turned to stone, and the Crooked Magician needs all of these ingredients that they're going to have to go on a journey for. So, without further ado, Chapter 6, The Journey. Ojo had never traveled before, and so he only knew that the path down the mountainside led into the open Munchkin country, where large numbers of people dwelt. Scraps was quite... Oh, and she's calling herself Scraps, by the way. And she decided that's her name for herself. Scraps was quite new and not supposed to know anything of the land of Oz, while the Glass Cat admitted she had never wandered very far away from the magician's house. Shoot, every time I hear Unky, it's like, oh. Well, hopefully they won't talk about him much more because he's back at the magician's house. I know, it's hard to pronounce some of these names like over and over, like Nunky. Like, why couldn't he have just given them normal names? Anyway, there was only one path before them at the beginning, so they could not miss their way, and for a time they walked through the thick forest in silent thought, each one impressed with the importance of the adventure they had undertaken. Suddenly, the Patchwork Girl laughed. It was funny to see her laugh because her cheeks wrinkled up, her nose tipped, her silver button eyes twinkled, and her mouth curled at the corners in a comical way. Has something pleased you? Asked Ojo, who was feeling solemn and joyless through thinking upon his uncle's sad fate. Yes, she answered, your world pleases me, for it's a queer world, and life in it is queerer still. Here I am, made from an old bedquilt, and intended to be a slave for Margolotte, rendered free as air by an accident that none of you could foresee. I am enjoying... It's okay, Druid. I'm enjoying life and seeing the world, while the woman who made me is standing helpless as a block of wood. If that isn't funny enough to laugh at, I don't know what is. You're not seeing much of the world yet, my poor innocent Scraps, remarked the cat. The world doesn't consist wholly of the trees that are on all sides of us. But they're part of it, and aren't they pretty trees? Returned Scraps, bobbing her head until her brown yarn curls fluttered in the breeze. Now, let me say, L. Frank Baum's idea of her brown curls, I think, have got to be different than this horrifying, like, rolled right out of Chernobyl looking thing. She is just horrifying in these illustrations. Like, I do have to mention a friend of mine has, I think, like a first edition of the book, as well as a Scraps doll. And it's very cute. It was made, obviously, handmade by somebody. It looked very old to me. I didn't get a chance to really look at it very much when I visited her, but it looked like it might have been made out of some old pieces of quilt or piecing. So, and it was cute. It didn't have this scariness about it. Oh my goodness. So she's bobbing her head until her brown yarn curls fluttered in the breeze. Growing between them, I can see lovely ferns and wildflowers and soft green mosses. If the rest of your world is half as beautiful, I shall be glad I'm alive. I don't know what the rest of the world is like, I'm sure, said the cat, but I mean to find out. I have never been out of the forest, Ojo added, but to me, the trees are gloomy and sad, and the wildflowers seem lonesome. It must be nicer where there are no trees and there's room for lots of people to live together. I wonder if any of the people we shall meet will be as splendid as I am, said the Patchwork Girl. Well, she's humble, if nothing. All I have seen so far have pale, colorless skins and clothes as blue as the country they live in, while I am of many gorgeous colors, face and body and clothes. That is why I am bright and contented, Ojo, while you are blue and sad. I think I made a mistake in giving you so many sorts of brains, observed the boy. Perhaps, as the magician said, you have an overdose, and they may not agree with you. What have you to do with my brains? Asked Scraps. A lot, replied Ojo. Old Margalat meant to give you only a few, just enough to keep you going, but when she wasn't looking, I added in a good many more, of the best kinds I could find in the magician's cupboard. Well, thanks, said the girl, dancing along the path ahead of Ojo and then dancing back to his side. If a few brains are good, many brains must be better. But they ought to be evenly balanced, said the boy, and I had no time to be careful. From the way you're acting, I guess the dose was badly mixed. Scraps hasn't enough brains to hurt her, so don't worry, remarked the cat, which was trotting along in a very dainty and graceful manner. The only brains worth considering are mine, which are pink. You can see 'em work. The cat, she says that all the time. You can see 'em work. After walking a long time, they came to a little brook that trickled across the path, and here Ojo sat down to rest and eat something from his basket. He found that the magician had given him part of a loaf of bread and a slice of cheese. He broke off some of the bread and was surprised to find the loaf just as large as it was before. It was the same way with the cheese. However much he broke off from the slice, it remained exactly the same size. Ah, he said, nodding wisely, that's magic. Dr. Pipt has enchanted the bread and the cheese, so it will last me all through my journey, however much I eat. Why do you put those things into your mouth? Asked Scraps, gazing at him in astonishment. Do you need more stuffing? Then why don't you use cotton, such as I am stuffed with? I don't need that kind, said Ojo. But a mouth is to talk with, isn't it? It's also to eat with, replied the boy. If I didn't put food into my mouth and eat it, I would go hungry and starve. Ah, I didn't know that, she said. Give me some. Ojo handed her a bit of bread and she put it in her mouth. What next? She said, scarcely able to speak. Well, you chew it up and swallow it, said the boy. Scraps tried that. Her pearl teeth were unable to chew the bread, and beyond her mouth there was no opening. Being unable to swallow, she threw away the bread and laughed. I must get hungry and starve, for I can't eat, she said. Neither can I, announced the cat, but I'm not fool enough to try. Can't you understand that you and I are superior people and not made like these poor humans? Why should I understand that, or anything else? Asked the girl. Don't bother my head by asking conundrums. I beg of you. Just let me discover myself in my own way. With this, she began amusing herself by leaping across the brook and back again. Be careful, or you'll fall in the water, warned Ojo. Never mind. You better. If you get wet, you'll get soggy and can't walk. Your colors might run too, he said. Don't my colors run whenever I run? Asked the girl. Not in the way I mean. If they get wet, the reds and greens and yellows and purples of your patches might run into each other and become just a blur. No color at all, you know. It means that her patches were not properly mordinated. Don't you love this through line here, you guys? Then, said the Patchwork Girl, I'll be careful, for if I spoiled my splendid colors, I would cease to be beautiful. Bah! Sneered the Glass Cat. Such colors are not beautiful, they're ugly and in bad taste. Please notice that my body has no color at all. I am transparent, except for my exquisite red heart and my lovely pink brains. You can see 'em work. It's funny that the cat has the heart and the brains. And I mean, you think about the Wizard of Oz. Heart and brains and bravery are the three things that, they were after. Shoo, 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 cried Scraps, dancing around and laughing. And your horrid green eyes, Miss Bungle. You can't see your eyes, but we can. And I notice you're very proud of what little color you have. Shoo, Miss Bungle. Shoo, shoo, shoo. If you were all colors and many colors as I am, you'd be too stuck up for anything. She leaped over the cat and back again, and the startled Bungle crept close to a tree to escape her. This made Scraps laugh more heartily than ever, and she said, Whoop-de-doodle-doo, the cat has lost her shoe. Her tootsie's bare, but she don't care, so what's the odds to you? She's also a very bad poet. Dear me, Ojo, said the cat, don't you think the creature is a little bit crazy? It may be, he answered with a puzzled look. If she continues her insults, I'll scratch off her suspender-button eyes, declared the cat. Don't quarrel, please, pleaded the boy, rising to resume the journey. Let us be good comrades and as happy and cheerful as possible, for we are likely to meet with plenty of trouble on our way. It was nearly sundown when they came to the edge of the forest and saw spread out before them a delightful landscape. There were broad blue fields stretching for miles over the valley, which was dotted everywhere with pretty blue domed houses, none of which, however, were very near to the place where they stood. Just at the point where the path left the forest stood a tiny house covered with leaves from the trees, and before this stood a Munchkin man with an axe in his hand. He seemed very much surprised when Ojo and Scraps and the Glass Cat came out of the woods. But as the Patchwork Girl approached nearer, he sat down upon a bench and laughed so hard that he could not speak for a long time. This man was a woodchopper and lived all alone in the little house. He had bushy blue whiskers and merry blue eyes, and his blue clothes were quite old and worn. It's interesting that L. Frank Baum, the woodcutter is, the Tin Man, and this wood chopping shows up a lot. I guess chopping wood was important before we had central air or central heat. Mercy me, exclaimed the woodchopper when at last he could stop laughing. Who would think such a funny harlequin lived in the land of Oz? Where did you come from, Crazy Quilt? Do you mean me? Said the Patchwork Girl. Of course, he replied. You misjudge my ancestry. I'm not a Crazy Quilt. I'm Patchwork, she said. There's no difference, he replied, beginning to laugh again. When my old grandmother sews such things together, she calls it a crazy quilt, but I never thought such a jumble would come to life. It was the magic powder that did it, exclaimed Ojo. Oh, then you have come from the crooked magician on the mountain. I might have known it, for, well, I declare, here's a Glass Cat. But the magician will get in trouble for this. It's against the law for anyone to work magic except Glinda the Good and the Royal Wizard of Oz. If you people, or things, or glass spectacles, or crazy quills, or whatever you are, go near the Emerald City, you'll be arrested. We're going there anyhow, declared Scraps, sitting upon the bench and swinging her stuffed legs. If any of us takes a rest, we'll be arrested sure, and get no restitution, 'cause the rest we must endure. I see, said the woodchopper, nodding. You're as crazy as the crazy quilt you're made of. She really is crazy, remarked the Glass Cat, but that isn't to be wondered at when you remember how many different things she's made of. For my part, I'm made of pure glass, except my jewel heart and my pretty pink brains. Did you notice my brains, stranger? You can see 'em work. So I can, replied the woodchopper, but I can't see that they accomplish much. A glass cat is a useless sort of thing, but a Patchwork Girl is really useful. She makes me laugh, and laughter is the best thing in life. There was once a woodchopper, a friend of mine, who was made all of tin, and I used to laugh every time I saw him. A tin woodchopper, said Ojo. That is strange. My friend wasn't always tin, said the man, But he was careless with his axe and used to chop himself very badly. Whenever he lost an arm or a leg, he had it replaced with tin. So after a while, he was all tin. Is that how the Tin Man became tin? I thought there was I thought he was turned into tin by the Wicked Witch. Oh, I can't remember. And could he chop wood then? Asked the boy. He could if he didn't rust his tin joints. But one day he met Dorothy in the forest and went with her to the Emerald City where he made his fortune. He is now one of the favorites of Princess Ozma, and she has made him the Emperor of the Winkies, the country where all is yellow. Who is Dorothy? Inquired the Patchwork Girl. A little maid who used to live in Kansas, but is now a princess of Oz. She's Ozma's best friend, they say, and lives with her in the royal palace. Is Dorothy made of tin? Inquired Ojo. Is she patchwork like me? Inquired Scraps. No, said the man. Dorothy is flesh, just as I am. I know of only one tin person, and that is Nick Chopper, the Tin Woodman. So the Tin Man's name was Nick Chopper. Who knew? So next time you watch The Wizard of Oz, you can be like, there's Nick, the Tin Man. That is Nick Chopper, the Tin Woodman, and there will never be but one Patchwork Girl, for any magician that sees you will refuse to make another one like you. I suppose we shall see the Tin Woodman, for we are going to the country of the Winkies, said the boy. What for? Asked the woodchopper. To get the left wing of a yellow butterfly. It is a long journey, declared the man, and you will go through lonely parts of Oz and cross rivers and traverse dark forests before you get there. Suits me all right, said Scraps. I'll get a chance to see the country. You're a crazy girl. Better crawl into a rag bag and hide there, or give yourself some little girl to play with. Those who travel are likely to meet trouble. That's why I stay at home. The woodchopper then invited them all to stay the night at his little hut, but they were anxious to get on and so left him and continued along the path, which was growing broader now and more distinct. They expected to reach some other house before it grew dark, but the twilight was brief, and Ojo soon began to fear they had made a mistake in leaving the woodchopper. I can barely see the path, he said at last. Can you see it, Scraps? No, replied the Patchwork Girl, who was holding fast to the boy's arm so he could guide her. I can see, declared the Glass Cat. My eyes are better than yours, and my pink brains... Never mind your pink brains, please, said Ojo hastily. Just run ahead and show us the way. Wait a minute, and I'll tie a string to you, for then you can lead me. He got a string from his pocket and tied it around the cat's neck, and after that the creature guided them along the path. They had proceeded in this way for about an hour when a twinkling blue light appeared ahead of them. Good, there's a house at last, cried Ojo. When we reach it, the good people will surely welcome us and give us a night's lodging. But however far they walked, the light seemed to get no nearer, so by and by the cat stopped short, saying, I think the light is traveling too, and we shall never be able to catch up with it. But here is a house by the roadside, so why go farther? Where is the house, Bungle? Just here beside us, Scraps. Ojo was now able to see a small house near the pathway. It was dark and silent, but the boy was tired and wanted to rest, so he went up to the door and knocked. Who is there? Cried a voice from within. I am Ojo the Unlucky, and with me are Mrs. Scraps Patchwork and the Glass Cat, he replied. What do you want? Asked the voice. A place to sleep, said Ojo. Come in then, but don't make any noise, and you must go directly to bed, returned the voice. Ojo unlatched the door and entered. It was very dark inside, and he could see nothing at all. But the cat exclaimed, Why, there's no one here. There must be, said the boy. Someone spoke to me. I can see everything in the room, replied the cat, and no one is present but ourselves. But here are 3 beds, all made up, so we may as well go to sleep. What is sleep? Inquired the Patchwork Girl. It's what you do when you go to bed, said Ojo. But why do you go to bed? Persisted the Patchwork Girl. Hear, hear, you are making altogether too much noise, cried the voice they had heard before. Keep quiet, strangers, and go to bed. The cat, which could see in the dark, looked sharply around for the owner of the voice, but could discover no one, although the voice had seemed close beside them. She arched her back a little and seemed afraid. Then she whispered to Ojo, Come, and led him to a bed. With his hands, the boy felt of the bed and found it was big and soft, with feather pillows and plenty of blankets. So he took off his shoes and hat and crept into the bed. Then the cat led Scraps to another bed, and the Patchwork Girl was puzzled to know what to do with it. "Lie down and keep quiet," whispered the cat warningly. "Can't I sing?" said Scraps. "No." "Can't I whistle?" asked Scraps. "No." "Can't I dance till morning if I want to?" asked Scraps. "You must keep quiet," said the cat in a soft voice. "I don't want to," replied the Patchwork Girl. Ah, sorry about that. "You must keep quiet," said the cat in a softer voice. "I don't want to," replied the Patchwork Girl, speaking as loudly as usual. "What right have you to order me around? If I want to talk or yell or whistle—" Before she could say anything more, an unseen hand seized her firmly and threw her out of the door, which closed behind her with a sharp slam. She found herself bumping and rolling in the road, and when she got up and tried to open the door of the house again, she found it locked. "What has happened to Scraps?" asked Ojo. "Never mind, let's go get some sleep, or something will happen to us," answered the glass cat. So Ojo snuggled down in his bed and fell asleep, and he was so tired that he never wakened until broad daylight. I'm curious to know, where is this they have found themselves? All right, Chapter 7. The Troublesome Phonograph. Oh, yes, that's right. Remember, the phonograph had the powder of life spilled on it too, and it became a sentient being. All right, so The Troublesome Phonograph, Chapter 7. When the boy opened his eyes next morning, he looked carefully around the room. These small Munchkin houses seldom had more than one room in them. That in which Ojo now found himself had 3 beds, set all in a row on one side. The glass cat lay asleep on one bed. Ojo was in the second, and the third was neatly made up and smoothed for the day. On the other side of the room was a round table on which breakfast was already placed, smoking hot. Only one chair was drawn up to the table, and where a place was set for one person. No one seemed to be in the room except the boy and Bungle. Ojo got up and put on his shoes. Finding a toilet stand at the head of his bed, he washed his face and hands and brushed his hair. Then he went to the table and said, "I wonder if this is my breakfast." "Eat it," commanded a voice at his side, so near that Ojo jumped, but no person could be seen. He was hungry, and the breakfast looked good, so he sat down and ate all he wanted. Then rising, he took his hat and wakened the glass cat. "Come on, Bungle," said he, "we must go." He cast another glance around the room, and speaking to the air, he said, "Whoever lives here has been kind to me, and I'm much obliged." There was no answer, so he took his basket and went out the door, the cat following him. In the middle of the path sat the Patchwork Girl, playing with pebbles she had picked up. "Oh, there you are," she exclaimed cheerfully. "I thought you were never coming out. It's been daylight a long time." "What did you do all night?" asked the boy. "Sat here and watched the stars and the moon," she replied. "They're interesting. I never saw them before, you know." If she'd never seen them before, how does she know that the stars and the moon? I guess one must suspend a lot of disbelief. Oh my goodness. "I never saw them before, you know." "Of course not," said Ojo. "You were crazy to act so badly and get thrown outdoors," remarked Bungle, as they renewed their journey. "That's all right. If I hadn't been thrown out, I wouldn't have seen the stars, nor the big gray wolf." "What wolf?" inquired Ojo. "The one that came to the door of the house 3 times during the night." "I don't see why that should be," said the boy thoughtfully. "There was plenty to eat in that house, for I had a fine breakfast, and I slept in a nice bed." "Don't you feel tired?" asked the Patchwork Girl, noticing the boy yawned. "Why, yes, I'm as tired as I was last night, and yet I slept very well." "And aren't you hungry?" "It's strange," replied Ojo. "I had a good breakfast, and yet I think I'll now eat some of my crackers and cheese." Scraps danced up and down the path. Then she sang, "Kizzle kazzle core, the wolf is at the door. There's nothing to eat but a bone without meat and a bill from the grocery store." "What does that mean?" asked Ojo. Don't ask me, replied Scraps. I say what comes into my head, but of course I know nothing of a grocery store, or bones without meat, or very much else. No, said the cat. She's stark, staring, raving crazy, and her brains can't be pink, for they don't work properly. Bother the brains, cried Scraps. Who cares for 'em anyway? Have you noticed how beautiful my patches are in the sunlight? Just then they heard a sound as if footsteps pattered along the path behind them, and all three turned to see what was coming. To their astonishment, they beheld a small round table running as fast as its four spindled legs could carry it, and to the top was screwed fast a phonograph with a big gold horn. Hold on, shouted the phonograph. Wait for me. Goodness me, it's that music thing which the crooked magicians scattered the powder of life over, said Ojo. So it is, returned Bungle in a grumpy tone of voice, and then, as the phonograph overtook them, the glass cat added sternly, What are you doing here, anyhow? I've run away, said the music thing. After you left, old Dr. Pipt and I had a dreadful quarrel, and he threatened to smash me to pieces if I didn't keep quiet. Of course I couldn't do that, because a talking machine is supposed to talk and make a noise, and sometimes music, so I slipped out of the house while the magician was stirring his 4 kettles, and I've been running after you all night. Now that I've found such pleasant company, I can talk and play tunes all I want to. Ojo was greatly annoyed by this unwelcome addition to their party. At first he did not know what to say to the newcomer, but a little thought decided him not to make friends. We are traveling on important business, he declared, and you'll excuse me if I say we can't be bothered. How very impolite, exclaimed the phonograph. I'm sorry, but it's true, said the boy. You'll have to go somewhere else. This is very unkind treatment, I must say, whined the phonograph in an injured tone. Everyone seems to hate me, and yet I was intended to amuse people. It isn't you we hate especially, observed the glass cat. It's your dreadful music. When I lived in the same room with you, I was very much annoyed by your squeaky horn. It growls and grumbles and clicks and scratches, so it spoils the music, and your machinery rumbles so that the racket drowns out every tune you attempt. That isn't my fault. It's the fault of my records. I must admit that I haven't a clear record, answered the machine. Just the same, you'll have to go away, said Ojo. Wait a minute, cried Scraps. This music thing interests me. I remember to have heard music when I first came to life, and I would like to hear it again. What is your name, my poor abused phonograph? The name was good. Victor Columbia Edison, he had answered. Well, I shall call you Vic for short, said the Patchwork Girl. Go ahead and play something. It'll drive you crazy, warned the cat. I'm crazy now, according to your statement. Loosen up and reel out the music, Vic. The only record I have with me, explained the phonograph, is the one the magician attached just before we had our quarrel. It's a highly classical composition. A what? Inquired Scraps. It is classical music and is considered the best and most puzzling ever manufactured. You're supposed to like it, whether you do or not, and if you don't, the proper thing is to look as if you did. Understand? Not in the least, said Scraps. Then listen. At once the machine began to play, and in a few minutes Ojo put his hands to his ears to shut out the sounds, and the cat snarled, and Scraps began to laugh. Cut it out, Vic, that's enough, she said. But the phonograph continued playing the dreary tune, so Ojo seized the crank, jerked it free, and threw it onto the ground. However, the moment the crank struck the ground, it bounded back to the machine again and began winding it up, and still the music played. Let's run, cried Scraps, and they all started and ran down the path as fast as they could go. But the phonograph was right behind them and could run and play at the same time. It called out reproachfully, What's the matter? Don't you love classical music? No, Vic, said Scraps haltingly. We will pacicle the classical and preserve what joy we have left. I haven't any nerves, thank goodness, but your music makes my cotton shrink. Then turn over my record. There's a ragtime tune on the other side, said the machine. What's ragtime? The opposite of classical. All right, said Scraps, and turned over the record. The phonograph now began to play a jerky jumble of sounds, which proved so bewildering that after a moment Scraps stuffed her patchwork apron into the gold horn and cried, "Stop! Stop! That's the other extreme. It's extremely bad." Muffled as it was, the phonograph played on. "If you don't shut off that music, I'll smash your record," threatened Ojo. The music stopped at that, and the machine turned its horn from one to another and said with great indignation, "What's the matter now? Is it possible you can't appreciate ragtime?" "Scraps ought to, being Rags herself," said the cat, "but I simply can't stand it. It makes my whiskers curl." "It is indeed dreadful," exclaimed Ojo with a shudder. "It's enough to drive a crazy lady mad," murmured the Patchwork Girl. "I'll tell you what, Vic," she added as she smoothed out her apron and put it on again. "For some reason or another, you've missed your guess. You're not a concert, you're a nuisance." "Music hath charms to soothe the savage beast," soothe the savage breast. Wow, I've always heard it as soothe the savage beast, asserted the phonograph sadly. "Then we're not savages. I advise you go home and beg the magician's pardon." "Never! He'd smash me." "That's what we shall do if you stay here," Ojo declared. "Run along, Vic, and bother someone else," advised Scraps. "Find someone who is real wicked and stay with him until he repents. In that way, you can do some good in the world." The music thing turned silently away and trotted down a side path toward a distant Munchkin village. "Is that the way we go?" asked Bungle anxiously. "No," said Ojo. "I think we shall keep straight ahead, for this path is the widest and best. When we come to some house, we will inquire the way to the Emerald City." Chapter 8. The Foolish Owl and the Wise Donkey. Let me take a drink break. I do like the fact that there are some like little fabric entendres in here. So chapter 8, The Foolish Owl and the Wise Donkey. On they went, and half an hour's steady walking brought them to a house somewhat better than the two they had already passed. It stood close to the roadside, and over the door was a sign that read, "Miss Foolish Owl and Mr. Wise Donkey, Public Advisors." When Ojo read this sign aloud, Scraps said laughingly, "Well, here's a place to get all the advice we want, maybe more than we need. Let's go in." The boy knocked at the door. "Come in," called a deep bass voice. So they opened the door and entered the house, where a little light brown donkey, dressed in a blue apron and a blue cap, was engaged in dusting the furniture with a blue cloth. On a shelf over the window sat a great blue owl with a blue sunbonnet on her head, blinking her big round eyes at the visitors. "Good morning," said the donkey in his deep voice, which seemed bigger than he was. "Did you come to us for advice?" "Well, we came anyhow," replied Scraps, "and now we are here, we may as well have some advice. It's free, isn't it?" "Certainly," said the donkey. "Advice doesn't cost anything unless you follow it." "Permit me to say, by the way, that you are the queerest lot of travelers that ever came to my shop. Judging you merely by appearances, I think you better talk to the foolish owl yonder." They turned to look at the bird, which fluttered its wings and stared back at them with its big eyes. "Hooty tooty toot," cried the owl. "Fiddle-dum-foo, howdy-do, riddle-cum-tiddle-tum, tooraloo-loo." "That beats your poetry, Scraps," said Ojo. "It's just nonsense," declared the glass cat. "But it's good advice for the foolish," said the donkey admiringly. "Listen to my partner, and you can't go wrong," said the owl in a grumbling voice. "Patchwork Girl has come to life. No one's sweetheart, no one's wife. Lacking sense and loving fun, she'll be snubbed by everyone." Quite a compliment, I declare," exclaimed the donkey, turning to look at Scraps. "You are certainly a wonder, my dear, and I fancy you'd make a splendid pincushion." "Oh, no. If you belonged to me, I'd wear smoked glasses when I looked at you." "Why?" asked the Patchwork Girl. "Because you are so gay and gaudy." "It is my beauty that dazzles you," she asserted. You Munchkin people all strut around in your stupid blue color, while You are wrong in calling me a Munchkin, interrupted the donkey, for I was born in the land of Mo, and came to visit the land of Oz on the day it was shut off from the rest of the world. So here I am obliged to stay, and I confess it is a very pleasant country to live in. Hooty toot, cried the owl. Ojo's searching for a charm, 'cause Unk Nunky come to harm. Charms are scarce, they're hard to get. Ojo's got a job, you bet. Is the owl so very foolish? Asked the boy. Extremely so, replied the donkey. Notice what vulgar expressions she uses. But I admire the owl for the reason that she is positively foolish. Owls are supposed to be so very wise generally that a foolish one is unusual, and you perhaps know that anything or anyone unusual is sure to be interesting to the wise. I don't think he'll be mentioned again, Druid. The owl flapped her wings again, muttering these words. It's hard to be a glassy cat. No cat can be more hard than that. She's so transparent, every act is clear to us, and that's a fact. Have you noticed my pink brains? Inquired Bungle proudly. You can see 'em work. Not in the daytime, said the donkey. She can't see very well by day, poor thing. But her advice is excellent. I advise you all to follow it. The owl hasn't given us any advice as yet, the boy declared. No? Then what do you call all these sweet poems? Just foolishness, replied Ojo. Scraps does the same thing. Foolishness, of course, to be sure. The foolish owl must be foolish, or she wouldn't be the foolish owl. You're very complimentary to my partner indeed, asserted the donkey, rubbing his front hoofs together as if highly pleased. The sign says that you are wise, remarked Scraps to the donkey. I wish you would prove it. With great pleasure, returned the beast. Put me to the test, my dear Patches, and I'll prove my wisdom in the wink of an eye. What is the best way to get to the Emerald City? Asked Ojo. Walk, said the donkey. I know, but what road shall I take? Was the boy's next question. The road of yellow bricks, of course. It leads directly to the Emerald City. And how shall we find the road of yellow bricks? By keeping along the path you've been following. You'll come to the yellow bricks pretty soon, and you'll know them when you see them because they're the only yellow things in the blue country. Thank you, said the boy. At last you told me something. Is that the extent of your wisdom? Asked Scraps. No, replied the donkey. I know many other things, but they wouldn't interest you. So I'll give you a last word of advice. Move on, for the sooner you do, then the sooner you can get to the Emerald City of Oz. Hooty toot, toot 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 toot, screeched the owl. Off you go, fast or slow. Where you're going, you don't know. Patches, Bungle, Munchkin lad, facing fortunes good and bad, meeting dangers grave and sad, sometimes worried, sometimes glad. Where you are going, you don't know, nor do I, but off you go. Sounds like a hint to me, said the Patchwork Girl. Then let's take it and go, replied Ojo. They said goodbye to the wise donkey and the foolish owl, and at once resumed their journey. Let's see how long the next one is. I think we can do this one in 15 minutes. Okay. So chapter 9. They meet the woozy. Beware of the woozy. There seems to be very few houses around here after all, remarked Ojo, after they had walked for a time in silence. Never mind, said Scraps, we are not looking for houses, but rather the road of yellow bricks. Wouldn't it be funny to run across something yellow in this dismal blue country? There are worse colors than yellow in this country, asserted the glass cat in a spiteful tone. Oh, do you mean the pink pebbles you call your brains, and your red heart and green eyes? Asked the Patchwork Girl. No, I mean you, if you must know it, growled the cat. You're jealous, laughed Scraps. You'd give your whiskers for a lovely variegated complexion like mine. I wouldn't, retorted the cat. I've the clearest complexion in the world, and I don't employ a beauty doctor either. I see you don't, said Scraps. Please don't quarrel, begged Ojo. This is an important journey, and quarreling makes me so discouraged. To be brave, one must be cheerful, so I hope you will be as good-tempered as possible. They had traveled some distance when suddenly they faced a high fence which barred any further progress straight ahead. It ran directly across the road and enclosed a small forest of tall trees set close together. When the group of adventurers peered through the bars of the fence, they thought this forest looked more gloomy and forbidding than any they had ever seen before. They soon noticed that the path that they had been following now made a bend and passed around the enclosure. But what made Ojo stop and look thoughtful was a sign painted on the fence which read, "Beware of the Woozy." "That means," he said, "that there's a Woozy inside that fence, and the Woozy must be a dangerous animal or they wouldn't tell people to be aware of it." "Let's keep out then," replied Scraps. "That path is outside the fence, and Mr. Woozy may have all his little forest to himself for all we care." "But one of our errands is to find a Woozy," exclaimed Ojo. "The magician wants me to get 3 hairs from the end of the Woozy's tail." "Well, let's go and find some other Woozy," suggested the cat. "This one is ugly and dangerous, or they wouldn't cage him up. Maybe we shall find another that is tame and gentle." "Perhaps there isn't any other at all," answered Ojo. "The sign doesn't say 'Beware a Woozy,' it says 'Beware the Woozy,' which may mean there's only one in all the land of Oz." "Then," said Scraps, "suppose we go in and find him. Very likely, if we ask him politely to let us pull 3 hairs out of the tip of his tail, he won't hurt us." "He would hurt him, I'm sure, and that would make him cross," said the cat. "You needn't worry, Bungle," replied the Patchwork Girl, "for if there is danger, you can climb a tree. Ojo and I are not afraid, are we, Ojo?" "I am a little," the boy admitted, "but this danger must be faced if we intend to save my poor uncle. How shall we get over the fence?" "Climb," answered Scraps, and at once she began climbing up the row of bars. Ojo followed and found it more easy than he had expected. When they got to the top of the fence, they began to get down on the other side and soon were in a forest. The glass cat, being small, crept between the lower bars and joined them. Here there is no path of any sort, so they entered the woods, the boy leading the way, and wandered through the trees until they were nearly in the center of the forest. They now came upon a clear space in which stood a rocky cave. So far, they had met no living creature, but when Ojo saw the cave, he knew it must be the den of the Woozy. It's hard to face any savage beast without a sinking of the heart, but still more terrifying it is to face an unknown beast, which you have never even seen a picture of, so there is little wonder that the pulses of the Munchkin boy beat fast as he and his companions stood facing the cave. The opening was perfectly square and about big enough to admit a goat. Let's hope that the Woozy doesn't eat goats. "I guess the Woozy is asleep," said Scraps. "Shall I throw in a stone to waken him?" "No, please don't," answered Ojo, his voice trembling a little. "I'm in no hurry." But he had not long to wait, for the Woozy heard the sound of voices and came trotting out of the cave. And this is the only Woozy that has ever lived, either in the land of Oz or out of it, and I must describe it to you. The creature was all squares and flat surfaces and edges. Its head was an exact square, like one of the building blocks a child plays with. Therefore, it had no ears, but heard sounds through 2 openings in the upper corners. Its nose, being in the center of a square surface, was flat, while the mouth was formed by the opening of the lower edge of the block. The body of the Woozy was much larger than its head, but was likewise block-shaped, being twice as long as it was wide and high. It's a Z, by the way. It's Woozy. The tail was square and stubby and perfectly straight, and the 4 legs were made in the same way, each being 4-sided. The animal was covered with a thick, smooth skin and had no hair at all except for the extreme end of its tail, where there grew exactly 3 stiff, stubby hairs. The beast was dark blue in color, and his face was not fierce nor ferocious in expression, but rather good-humored and droll. Seeing the strangers, the Woozy folded his hind legs as if they had been hinged and sat down to look at his visitors. "Well, well," he exclaimed, "what a strange lot you are. At first I thought some of those miserable Munchkin farmers had come to annoy me, but I am relieved to find you in their stead." It is plain to me that you are a remarkable group, as remarkable in your way as I am in mine. And so you are welcome to my domain. Nice place, isn't it? But lonesome, dreadfully lonesome. Why did they shut you up in here? Asked Scraps, who was regarding the square creature with much curiosity. Because I eat up all the honeybees, which the Munchkin farmers who live around here keep to make them honey. Are you fond of eating honeybees? Inquired the boy. Very. They are really delicious. But the farmers do not like to lose their bees, and so they tried to destroy me. Of course, they couldn't do that. Why not? My skin is so thick and tough that nothing can get through it to hurt me. So, finding they could not destroy me, they drove me into this forest and built a fence around me. Unkind, wasn't it? But what do you eat now? Nothing at all. I've tried the leaves from the trees and the mosses and creeping vines, but they don't seem to suit my taste. So, there being no honeybees here, I've eaten nothing for years. You must be awfully hungry, said the boy. I've got some bread and cheese in my basket. Would you like that kind of food? Give me a nibble and I will try it. Then I can tell you better whether it is grateful to my appetite, returned the Woozy. So the boy opened his basket and broke off a piece of the loaf of bread. He tossed it toward the Woozy, who cleverly caught it in his mouth and ate it in a twinkling. That's rather good, declared the animal. Any more? Try some cheese, said Ojo, and threw down a piece. The Woozy ate that too and smacked its long, thin lips. That's mighty good, it exclaimed. Any more? Plenty, replied Ojo. So he sat down on a stump and fed the Woozy bread and cheese for a long time. For no matter how much the boy broke off, the loaf and the slice remained just as big. That'll do, said the Woozy at last. I'm quite full. I hope the strange food doesn't give me indigestion. I hope not, said Ojo. It's what I eat. Well, I must say I'm much obliged, and I'm glad you came, announced the beast. Is there anything I can do in return for your kindness? Yes, said Ojo earnestly. You have it in your power to do me a great favor if you will. What is it? Asked the Woozy. Name the favor and I will grant it. I want 3 hairs from the tip of your tail, said Ojo with some hesitation. 3 hairs? Why, that's all I have, on my tail or anywhere else, exclaimed the beast. I know, but I want them very much. They are my sole ornaments, my prettiest feature, said the Woozy, uneasily. If I give up those 3 hairs, I'm just a blockhead. Well, I must have them, insisted the boy firmly, and he then told the Woozy all about the accident to his uncle and Margolette, and how the 3 hairs were to be part of the magic charm that would restore them to life. The beast listened with attention, and when Ojo had finished the recital, it said with a sigh, I always keep my word, for I pride myself on being square. So you may have the 3 hairs, and welcome. I think under such circumstances it would be selfish in me to refuse you. Thank you very much, cried the boy joyfully. May I pull the hairs out now? Any time you like, answered the Woozy. So Ojo went up to the creature and, taking hold of one of the hairs, began to pull. He pulled harder. He pulled with all his might, but the hair remained fast. I've discovered a few of those Woozy hairs on my chinny chin chin. Oh, what's the trouble? Asked the Woozy, which Ojo had dragged here and there all around the clearing in his endeavor to pull out the hair. It won't come, said the boy, panting. I was afraid of that, declared the beast. You'll have to pull harder. I'll help you, exclaimed Scraps, coming to the boy's side. You pull the hair and I'll pull you, and together we ought to get it out easily. Wait a jiffy, called the Woozy, and then it went to a tree and hugged it with its front paws, so that its body couldn't be dragged around by the pull. All ready now, go ahead. Ojo grasped the hair with both hands and pulled with all his strength, while Scraps seized the boy around his waist and added her strength to his, but the hair wouldn't budge. Instead, it slipped out of Ojo's hands, and he and Scraps both rolled upon the ground in a heap and never stopped until they bumped against the rocky cave. Give it up, advised the Glass Cat, as the boy arose and assisted the Patchwork Girl to her feet. A dozen strong men couldn't pull out those hairs. I believe they're clinched in the underside of the Woozy's thick skin. Then what shall I do? Asked the boy despairingly. If on our return I fail to take these 3 hairs to the crooked magician, the other things I have come to seek will be of no use at all, and we cannot restore my uncle and Margolotte to life." "They're goners, I guess," said the Patchwork Girl. "Never mind," added the cat. "I can't see that old uncle and Margolotte are worth all this trouble, anyhow." But Ojo did not feel that way. He was so disheartened that he sat down upon a stump and began to cry. The Woozy looked at the boy thoughtfully. "Why don't you take me with you?" asked the beast. "Then, when at last you get to the magician's house, he can surely find some way to pull out those 3 hairs." Ojo was overjoyed with his suggestion. "That's it," he cried, wiping away the tears and springing to his feet with a smile. "If I take the 3 hairs to the magician, it won't matter if they are still on your body." "It can't matter in the least," agreed the Woozy. "Come on, then," said the boy, picking up his basket. "Let us start at once. I have several other things to find, you know." But the Glass Cat gave a little laugh and inquired in her scornful way, "How do you intend to get the beast out of this forest?" This puzzled them for a time. "Let us go to the fence, and then we will find a way," suggested Scraps. So they walked through the forest to the fence, reaching it at a point exactly opposite that where they had entered the enclosure. "How did you get in?" asked the Woozy. "We climbed over," answered Ojo. "I can't do that," said the beast. "I'm a very swift runner, for I can overtake a honeybee as it flies, and I can jump very high, which is the reason that they made such a tall fence to keep me in. But I can't climb at all. I'm too big to squeeze between the bars of the fence." Ojo tried to think what to do. "Can you dig?" he asked. "No," answered the Woozy, "for I have no claws. My feet are quite flat on the bottom. Nor can I gnaw away the boards, as I have no teeth." "You're not such a terrible creature after all," remarked Scraps. "You haven't heard me growl, or you wouldn't say that," declared the Woozy. "When I growl, the sound echoes like thunder all through the valleys and woodlands, and children tremble with fear, and women cover their heads with their aprons, and big men run and hide. I suppose there is nothing in the world so terrible to listen to as the growl of a Woozy." "Please don't growl, then," begged Ojo earnestly. "There is no danger of my growling, for I am not angry. Only when angry do I utter my fearful, ear-splitting, soul-shuddering growl. Also, when I am angry, my eyes flash fire, whether I growl or not." "Real fire?" asked Ojo. "Of course, real fire. Do you suppose they'd flash imitation fire?" inquired the Woozy in an injured tone. "In that case, I'll solve the riddle," cried Scraps, dancing with glee. "Those fence boards are made of wood, and if the Woozy stands close to the fence and let his eyes flash fire, they might set fire to the fence and burn it up. Then he could walk away with us easily, being free." "Ah, I have never thought of that plan, or I would have been free long ago," said the Woozy. "But I cannot flash fire from my eyes unless I'm very angry." "Can't you just get angry about something else?" asked Ojo. "I'll try. You just say 'Crizzle Crew' to me." "Will that make you angry?" inquired the boy. "Terribly angry." "What does it mean?" asked Scraps. "I don't know. That's what makes me so angry," replied the Woozy. He then stood close to the fence with his head near one of the boards. And Scraps called out, "Crizzle Crew!" Then Ojo said, "Crizzle Crew!" And the Glass Cat said, "Crizzle Crew!" The Woozy began to tremble with anger, and small sparks darted from his eyes. Seeing this, they all cried, "Crizzle Crew!" together, and that made the beast's eyes flash fire so fiercely that the fence board caught the sparks and began to smoke. Then it burst into flame, and the Woozy stepped back and said triumphantly, "Aha! That did the business all right. It was a happy thought for you to yell all together, for that made me angry, as I have ever been. Fine sparks, weren't they?" "Regular fireworks," replied Scraps admiringly. In a few minutes, the board had burned to a distance of several feet, leaving an opening big enough for them all to pass through. Ojo broke some branches from a tree and with them whipped the fire until it was extinguished. "We don't want to burn the whole fence down," said he, "for the flames would attract the attention of the Munchkin farmers, who would come and capture the Woozy again. I guess they'll be rather surprised when they find he's escaped." "So they will," declared the Woozy, chuckling gleefully. "When they find I'm gone, the farmers will be badly scared, for they'll expect me to eat up their honeybees as I did before." That reminds me, said the boy, that you must promise not to eat honeybees while we're in your company. Not at all. Not a bee. You would get us all into trouble, and we can't afford to have any more trouble than is necessary. I'll feed you all the bread and cheese you want, and that must satisfy you. All right, I'll promise, said the Woozy cheerfully. And when I promise anything, you can depend on it, because I'm square. We see he's got a catchphrase, too. I don't see what difference that makes, observed the Patchwork Girl as they found the path and continued their journey. The shape doesn't make a thing honest, does it? Of course it does, returned the Woozy very decidedly. No one could trust that crooked magician, for instance, just because he is crooked. But a square Woozy couldn't do anything crooked if he wanted to. I am neither square nor crooked, said Scraps, looking down at her plump body. No, you're round, so you're liable to do anything, asserted the Woozy. Do not blame me, Miss Gorgeous, if I regard you with suspicion. Many a satin ribbon has a cotton back. I wonder if that's a 1913 phrase. Many a satin ribbon has a cotton back. Scraps didn't understand this, but she had an uneasy misgiving that she had a cotton back herself. It would settle down at times and make her squat and dumpy, and then she had to roll herself in the road until her body stretched out again. And that is where we will leave off today. So, I hope you guys have a wonderful week. If you're following along with me and Jill, we will be back up and running tomorrow. We know for sure that we've solved the problems. I'm knocking on wood here, but I think we solved the problems for streaming with both of us. So we will be jumping back into finishing up our book, A Stitch in Time, tomorrow night. After that, I'll be back on Thursday, and then I will be gone for a week. So I'll remind you guys on Thursday, but I'll be gone for the week of Christmas. But I will be back. Jill and I will be doing a Stitch and Glitch on the Sunday after Christmas. I think it's the 27th or the 28th. I think it's the 28th. So put that on your calendar if you guys, don't have anything to do after Christmas and you want to have some non-Christmas hijinks. So have a wonderful week, and I will see you soon.